Do you want me to share the screen, Prabhu?
If you can, otherwise I can pull it up. It'll just take me a minute. I wasn't sure.
That's okay. I'll do it. Just 1 second.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're covering 3 verses, but these two are together. Usually we'll just chant one of them, but they sort of go together, and there are so few of us anyway. We'll just chant both of these together, and then we'll cover the rest separately. So here in this the first half of the line, there's a character that very rarely comes up. It's the L with a dot under it, and it makes the sound ri, like L-R-E-E, ri. You won't find it very often, but here it is in today's verse. So if you see that and you're like wondering, what is that letter? I've never seen it before, then now you know it's ri. Okay. So text 40 and 41. Tat katyam chatalam kritam urubhyam vitalam vibaho janubhyam sutalam shudham jangabhyam tu talatalam mahatalam tu gulpabhyam pravadabhyam rasatalam patalam padatalata iti loka maya puman tatkatyam chatalam kritam urubhyam vitalam vibaho janubhyam sutalam shudham janghabhyam tu talatalam mahatalam tu gupabhyam prapadabhyam rasatalam patalam padatalata iti loka maya puman tatkatyam chatalam kritam urubhyam vitalam vibaho janubhyam sutalam shuddham janghabhyam tu talatalam mahatalam tu gupabhyam prapadabhyam rasatalam patalam pada talata iti loka maya puman. Okay, please chant.
तत्कट्यां च तलं क्लिप्तम् ऊरुभ्यां विठलं विभो जानुभ्यां सुतलं शुद्धं जङ्घाभ्यां तु तलातलं महातलं तु गुल्फाभ्यां प्रपदाभ्यां रसातलं पातालं पादतलता इति लोकमया पुमान्.
तत्कट्यं चातलं क्लिप्तम् उरुभ्यां वितलं विभो जानुभ्यां सुतलं सुब्धं जङ्घेभ्यां तु तलातलं महातलं तु गुल्फाभ्यां प्रपदाभ्यां रसातलं पातालं पादतलता इति लोकमयं पुमान्.
हरे कृष्ण. तत्कट्यां चतलं क्लिप्ताम् उरुभयां वितलं विभोः जानुभयां सुतलं शुद्धं जङ्घाभयामतो तलातलं मातलं तु गुल्फाभयां प्रपदाभयां रसातलं पातालं पादतलत इति लोकमया पुमान्. हरे कृष्ण. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Tat in his. Katyam waste. Cha also. Atalam, the first planetary system below the Earth. Kriptam, situated. Urubhyam, on the thighs. Vitalam, the second planetary system below. Vibho, of the Lord. Janubhyam, on the ankles. Sutalam, the third planetary system below. Shuddham, purified. Janghabhyam, on the joints. Two, but. Talatalam, the fourth planetary system below. Mahatalam, the fifth planetary system below. Two, but. Gulpabhyam, situated on the calves. Prapadhabhyam, on the upper or front portion of the feet. Rasatalam, the sixth planetary system below. Patalam, the seventh planetary system below. Padatalataha, on the bottom or soles of the feet. Iti, thus. Lokamayaha, full of planetary systems. Uman, the Lord. Translation by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. My dear son Narada, know from me that there are 7 lower planetary systems out of the total 14. The first planetary system, known as Atala, is situated on the waist. The second, Vitala, is situated on the thighs. The third, Sutala, on the knees. The fourth, Talatala, on the shanks. The fifth, Mahatala, on the ankles. The sixth, Rasatala, on the upper portion of the feet. And the seventh, Patala, on the soles of the feet. Thus, the Virat form of the Lord is full of all planetary systems. Purport. Modern enterprisers, in other words, the astronauts who travel in space, may take information from Srimad Bhagavatam that in space there are 14 divisions of planetary systems. The situation is calculated from the earthly planetary system, which is called Bhurloka. Above Bhurloka is Bhuvarloka, and the topmost planetary system is called Satyaloka. These are the upper 7 lokas, or planetary systems. And similarly, there are 7 lower planetary systems, known as Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala lokas. All these planetary systems are scattered over the complete universe, which occupies an area of 2 billion times 2 billion square miles. The modern astronauts can travel only a few thousand miles away from the Earth, and therefore their attempt to travel in the sky is something like child's play on the shore of an expansive ocean. The moon is situated in the 3rd status of the upper planetary system, and in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we shall be able to know the distant situation of the various planets scattered over the vast material sky. There are innumerable universes beyond the one in which we are put, and all these material universes cover only an insignificant portion of the spiritual sky, which is described above as Sanatana Brahmaloka. The Supreme Lord very kindly invites the intelligent human beings to return home, back to Godhead, in the following verse of Bhagavad Gita 8:16. Abrahma bhuvana loka punar avartinarjuna mam upetya tu kaunteya punarjanma na vidyate. Beginning from Satyaloka, the topmost planet of the universe, situated just below the eternal Brahmaloka, as described above, all the planets are material, and one's situation in any of the many material planets is still subject to the law of material nature, namely birth, death, old age, and disease. But one can get complete liberation from all of the above mentioned material pangs when one enters into the eternal Brahmaloka Sanatan atmosphere, the kingdom of God. Therefore, liberation, as contemplated by the speculative philosophers and the mystics, is possible only when one becomes a devotee of the Lord. Anyone who is not a devotee cannot enter into the kingdom of God. Only by attainment of a service attitude in the transcendental position can one enter into the kingdom of God. Therefore, the speculative philosophers, as well as the mystics, must first of all be attracted to the devotional cult before they can factually attain liberation. Then text 42. Purloka kalpita padbyam Bhuvar lokosya nabitaha svarloka kalpito murdhna iti va loka kalpana. Bhurlokaha, the entire planetary system from Patala to the earthly planetary system. Kalpita, imagined. Padbhyam, situated on the legs. Bhuvar lokaha, the Bhuvar planetary system. Asya, of the universal form of the Lord. Nabhitaha, out of the navel abdomen. Svarlokaha, the higher planetary systems, beginning with the heavenly planets. Kalpitaha, imagined. Murdhna, from the chest to the head. Iti, thus. Va, either. Loka, the planetary systems. Pardon me. Kalpana, imagination. Translations. Others may divide the whole planetary system into three divisions, namely the lower planetary systems on the legs up to the earth, the middle planetary systems on the navel, and the upper planetary systems, Svarloka, from the chest to the head of the Supreme Personality. Purport. The three divisions of the complete planetary systems are here mentioned. 14 divisions are imagined by others, and that is also explained. So in this verse, it was three divisions, Bor, Bhuva, and Sva. And in the previous verse, then 14 were, the previous verses, I should say, and then 14 were given. And so these were explained. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Cause of All Causes. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gaurabani Pacharani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashati Deshatare Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Nilidhamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Vancha Kalpadrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. So today we concluded the 5th chapter, the cause of all causes. So, of course, we were talking about the universal form, the sarva karana karanam, the cause of all causes. And the theme of what we can take away from today's verses, as well as the entire chapter, the entire canto, and even the whole Srimad Bhagavatam for that matter, is given to us by Srila Prabhupada toward the end of the first purport that we read. And this is where he said, I think it's the second to the last sentence of the first purport. He says, Only by attainment of a service attitude in the transcendental position can one enter into the kingdom of Godhead. Right? So that's going to be the main focus. That's the main focus, of course, of our entire philosophy. But before we elaborate on that, I want to touch a little bit on what was mentioned in these verses. So the different planetary systems, and hopefully I can show how that is connected to this statement, right? Because this statement was in this purport. I'll read that statement again. Only by attainment of a service attitude in the transcendental position can one enter into the kingdom of Godhead, right? One might think that that sentence might not even belong in this purport that's talking about these lower planetary systems. But so first I want to just touch on a little bit, go a little bit more into detail of what happens on these lower planetary systems. And then, like I said, hopefully I'll also show what the connection is between today's theme, which is the theme, again, of the entire philosophy, and these particular verses, this chapter, etc. So the first thing I should mention is that these lower planetary systems that we mentioned in this verse, they're commonly mistaken to be hellish planets, right? I don't know why. Maybe it's because they're below the earth, and some of us were taught that below the earth is where hell is. It could also be because we also know that demons live there, right? Demons and Rakshasas. So we're also taught, or we can imagine, that demons would be living in hell, right? But actually, when we read the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we find out that these planetary systems that we read about today, they're subterranean heavenly planets, right? Demons live there, but it's actually a heavenly planet. There are also hellish planets. So in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 24th chapter, these exact planets, these planetary systems, are mentioned in great detail. And that chapter is called the Subterranean Heavenly Planets. The hellish planets are later described 2 chapters later, chapter 26. That's called a description of the hellish planets. So we find out what goes on in those planets, who is sent there, why they're sent there, what kind of bodies they have. But the planets that we read about today, these are subterranean heavenly planets. So first, I'm just going to read an excerpt from the chapter summary from that 5th canto, 26th or 24th chapter regarding these subterranean heavenly planets. That way, it'll just give a little bit more of an idea of what goes on these planets. And if you want to know more, you can read that actual chapter, the 5th canto. So Srila Prabhupada writes in the chapter summary, demons and Rakshasas live in these lower planetary systems with their wives and children, always engaged in sense gratification and not fearing their next births. So they're always engaged in sense gratification and they're not fearing their next birth. That's a very important thing for us to understand. The sunshine does not reach these planets, but they are illuminated by jewels fixed upon the hoods of snakes. Because of these shining gems, there is practically no darkness. Those living in these planets do not become old or diseased, and they are not afraid of death from any cause but the time factor, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now I'm going to pause here to explain this a little bit. So from this, we should clearly understand that these aren't hellish planets. There's a lot of sense gratification going on. And it's worth pointing out that there's actually the level of sense gratification on the subterranean heavenly planets is actually higher than the sense gratification that is on the upper heavenly planets, materially speaking, of course, right? So, and the reason being is they don't have anxiety, and they're not afraid. There's no old age or disease, and the only time they're not afraid of death because they're not reminded that time is going by. But they do understand that at one point they will die. They just don't see it coming. Those in the upper heavenly planetary systems, they see the sun, they see the planets all rotating. It's also known as the Kala Chakra. So they are reminded on a moment-to-moment basis that time is ticking away. And so it affects their enjoyment, right? But there's actually a reason for this, and we've covered this before, is those who are in the subterranean heavenly planets, so they've built up some piety, obviously, because they're enjoying. You can't enjoy without building up some piety. But their specific flavor of piety also ignores the Supreme Lord. So they don't want to acknowledge that the Lord is supreme. They just figure, okay, no, we're here. We've worked for this enjoyment. Now I want to just, do it. So this is compared to people who go on vacation in or to like casinos, things like that, places where just like the subterranean heavenly planets, you don't know, there are no clocks on the walls, there are no windows, so you can see whether it's day or night. You're just there to enjoy. You're there to gamble money away and drink booze and enjoy, right? So that's what the subterranean heavenly planets are compared to. It's where people who don't want to acknowledge the Lord's existence at all go to spend their accumulated piety, right? Whereas the heavenly planets that are above us, there are people who also have built up material piety, so they built up the right to enjoy, but they know that the Lord is supreme. They still want to enjoy sense gratification, so there's it's certainly not perfect, but at least they understand that this the Supreme Lord is there and he is to be served, and so they're doing their part. So it's a different situation, right? I'll just continue this chapter summary to give a little example of what goes on these planets. So Srila Prabhupada continues. In the planet Atala, the yawning of a demon has produced 3 kinds of women called Svairini, which means independent, Kamini, which means lusty, and Pungchali, which means very easily subdued by men. So that's just one of the many features of that particular planet, Atala. Then Srila Prabhupada continues, below Atala is the planet Vitala, wherein Lord Shiva and his wife Gauri reside. Because of their presence, a kind of gold is produced called Hataka. And all the details of all these things are further described in the 5th canto. Below Vitala is the planet Sutala, the abode of Bali Maharaj, the most fortunate king. Bali Maharaj was favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vamanadev, because of his intense devotional service. The Lord went to the sacrificial arena of Bali Maharaj and begged him for 3 paces of land. And on this plea, the Lord took from him all his possessions. When Bali Maharaj agreed to all of this, the Lord was very pleased, and therefore the Lord serves as his doorkeeper. The description of Bali Maharaj appears in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So actually at this point, I want to pause from the chapter summary and I want to read something from that chapter. It's 5th canto, 24th chapter. This is verse 24, because this is an important thing for us to understand, and it ties into the main theme. So this is verse 24. Alas, how pitiable it is for Indra, the king of heaven, that although he is very learned and very powerful, and although he chose Brihaspati as his prime minister to instruct him, he is completely ignorant concerning spiritual advancement. Brihaspati is also unintelligent because he did not properly instruct his disciple Indra. Lord Vamanadev was standing at Indra's door, but King Indra, instead of begging him for an opportunity to render transcendental loving service, he engaged him. So Indra engaged Vamanadev in asking me for alms to gain the 3 worlds for his sense gratification. Sovereignty over the three worlds is very insignificant because whatever material opulence one may possess lasts only for an age of Manu, which is but a tiny fraction of endless time. So in that purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that Bali Maharaj, he was so powerful that he fought with Indra and he took possession of the three worlds, right? So Indra, although he was very advanced in knowledge, and although he understood that the Lord is supreme, and although that he actually had a spiritual master and inquired from him, when it came time to actually, when he saw the Lord face to face, Lord Vamana was there. Instead of just begging him, please let me be engaged in your devotional service, no, he said, hey, could you do me a favor? Bali took these, all three worlds away, and I'm supposed to be the ruler. So could you get that back for me? Right. This is what Indra said so he sees the Supreme Lord, he can get anything from him. And what does he do? He doesn't beg for service. No, he says, hey, do you think you could get my land back from that demon that took it so I can continue enjoying? Right. So this is what Srila Prabhupada points out here. So from time to time, it's possible that the demons are actually not only do they follow the Vedic process better and they can get a better result, but also sometimes even devotionally they're better situated. In this case of Bali Maharaj, who, because of his grandfather Prahlad Maharaj, he had some nice instructions, and so that was there. But so because of Bali's intense devotional service, the Lord actually agreed to become his doorkeeper there in which loka is that? Sutala. Okay, now we'll continue that chapter summary. Oh, first Srila Prabhupada comments a little more on that in the chapter summary. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead offers a devotee material happiness, this is not his real favor. The demigods, who are very puffed up by their material opulence, pray to the Lord only for material happiness, not knowing anything better. Devotees like Prahlad Maharaj, however, coming from a demon family, do not want material happiness. Not to speak of material happiness, they do not even want liberation from material bondage, although one can achieve this liberation simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, even with improper pronunciation. Then Srila Prabhupada continues, below Sutala is the planet Talatala, the abode of the demon Maya. This demon is always materially happy because he is favored by Lord Shiva, but he cannot achieve spiritual happiness at any time. So this is a very important thing, because sometimes when we read about these subterranean heavenly planets, we think, wow, this actually sounds good. It sounds better than the upper heavenly planets where, there's no stress. It's much more material bliss. But we also find out that in that place, you can't achieve spiritual happiness. You can only achieve material happiness, and it's only the exact amount that you have accumulated through your work, right? So although, it sounds like a nice place to go on vacation, it's not for us because we're eternal beings and it's a temporary place. Srila Prabhupada continues, below Talatala is the planet Mahatala, where there are many snakes with hundreds and thousands of hoods. Below Mahatala is Rasatala, and below that is Patala, where the serpent Vasuki lives with his associates. So again, that's from the chapter summary of the 5th canto, chapter 24. So that just mentions a little bit more about the planets we spoke about today. But I mentioned that there is a theme that Srila Prabhupada pointed out near the end of today's purport. And like I said, it might be difficult to see how these explanations of these planets can pertain to that theme. Does anyone remember what that theme is? That you could either paraphrase it or give part of it. The main theme that I said it encompasses today's verses, the whole chapter, the whole canto, and the Srimad Bhagavatam itself. Okay. Shy crew, that's okay. This is what Srila Prabhupada wrote. Only by attainment of a service attitude in the transcendental position can one enter into the kingdom of Godhead. right? So what does this have to do with the, the description of the universal form that we just went through, and specifically these planets, right? So the idea is this: when we properly understand the intricate workings of this material world, we can see the different suitable places for different types of living entities, right? So the lower planetary systems are designed for a very specific type of people, with very specific needs, desires, and motivations, right? The earthly planets are a place of activity, right? The middle ones, where we are now, where you can actually build up piety, right? The lower and upper heavenly planets is where you spend your piety. If you build up a lot of positive pious credit, whether it's, well, we'll just say pious credits. If it's positive, where you actually acknowledge Vishnu, then you can end up on the heavenly planets and enjoy there. If your piety is what I would call negative, meaning that although you've done the work, you've actually followed the Vedic process to build up piety, but you do not acknowledge that Vishnu is the supreme, then you end up in these subterranean heavenly planets, right? So the Devatas live in the upper planetary systems, and the demons live in the lower, because the demons don't acknowledge Lord Vishnu in general. So, and this is the way that the world is created, right? So there's all of these different places are meant for very specific things. So it should be understood that none of these places in this material world are made for the eternal servants of Krishna in their purified consciousness. Now, of course, Krishna consciousness can be practiced anywhere, right? We could see that from the example of Bali Maharaj. He's actually in a subterranean heavenly planet where generally they don't even accept that. I mean, they know that Vishnu is a being. They figure he's one of the demigods, and they think it's very unfair that he's always taking the sides of the demigods, right? But they don't accept him as supreme. They don't accept him as the cause of all causes, the sarvakara karanam. But even in that situation, with all of that association, in that very specific realm where, no one accepts Vishnu, you have someone who, through association, positive association from his grandfather, was able to accept and actually dedicate his life to Lord Vishnu, right? So it's possible anywhere you can practice Krishna consciousness, but that's not what this material world is designed for. This material world is designed for reformation, to get us from the mentality that we are here to enjoy to the mentality that we are actually to serve Krishna. And once we redirect our consciousness in that way, once we actually understand our true position to serve Krishna with love, to engage in pure bhakti, then we are liberated from this material world, and we can go back home, back to Godhead, as Srila Prabhupada points out. So yeah, this is the place where basically we serve out, and often we add to our karmic sentence for as long as it takes to actually purify our consciousness. So understanding the material world as Krishna's form instead of, as a place to enjoy separately from Krishna, and understanding the reason that he expanded that form will help us understand that the world actually isn't meant for our pleasure. Because currently that's how we live our lives. We live our lives as if this world is just meant for our pleasure. This is the only consideration we take when we interact with material nature. How does it serve me? Does it feed me? Does it shelter me? Does it make me profit? Does it make me comfortable? Does it entertain me? Like that. It's always centered around us. This is a material mentality. But the spiritual mentality is we center everything around Krishna. So how is this thing to be used in Krishna's service? This is the difference between self-centric and God-centric. So understanding how this material world is just an expansion of Krishna's form also helps us to understand that we can't truly be satisfied here, right? Because we're eternal beings and we're in a temporary place. So if we understand these things via Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, it can help us actually redirect our consciousness from that self-centric I was talking about to God-centric. And when we develop that proper service attitude, when we become God-centric, that everything we do is just to serve the Supreme Lord, then we are able to return back home, back to Godhead. Thus, as Srila Prabhupada pointed out in this purport, only by attainment of a service attitude in the transcendental position can one enter into the kingdom of God. Right? Because currently we don't have a service attitude. We have a we want to be served attitude, right? We have an enjoyment attitude. And we're not in the transcendental position, we're in the material position because we think we're the center. So there's no question of returning to the kingdom of God. Right? So it should be pointed out here, and this we can understand from the chapter summary I was reading, that just acknowledging that Krishna is the supreme isn't enough, right? The Devatas acknowledge that Krishna is supreme, but they're still materially motivated, right? And we learned from that verse that Indra in that particular situation was completely unfortunate, even though he was situated properly, he had proper knowledge, he had a guru, right? He was taking instruction from him, but still, since his motivation was to enjoy materially, that he was much less fortunate than Bali Maharaj, who was technically a demon, who lived in the subterranean heavenly planets, where they traditionally don't even accept that Vishnu is the supreme, right? So we should understand that even if we are in a position that we understand that Krishna is the supreme and we've accepted a spiritual master and we're following his instructions, if our consciousness is still to enjoy materially, if it's not 100% just to serve Krishna, then we will not return back home, back to Godhead. Again, the sentence, only by attainment of a service attitude in the transcendental position can one enter into the kingdom of God, right? All of these other things are details that help with that principle. But if we don't get to that principle, actually understanding how to redirect our consciousness from self-centric to God-centric, then we're here, we're bound to this material world. So the service attitude must be there. It has to come there. And we've learned from the yoga ladder portion of Bhagavad Gita that basically we go from karma, which is, working with attachment to the result. I do this and I get this in return and I can enjoy the fruits of it. Then when we get a little bit of knowledge, then we still work with attachment, but we're at least willing to give a portion of that to a higher cause, right? So that's called Sakam Karma Yoga. Then there's Nishkam Karma Yoga, where we're still working, but it's without attachment, so we're still working for the Supreme. And of course, eventually we want to be spontaneously engaged in pure, unalloyed, uninterrupted, unmotivated devotional service. All right. So a common example of what this looks like, and we give this example a lot, is and it's relatable to everyone because everybody eats, right? So when we were born, basically we ate whatever was given to us, right? And then we've developed a unique preferences on what we like to eat, right? Some of us prefer savory things, some of us prefer sweet things, some of us like bitter, some like sour, some like the whole variety, but at certain times of the day they want certain things. We all have very unique tastes, right? And so that's what we eat, right? That's what we make. We make the things that we like to eat. Why would we make something that we don't like? It doesn't make any sense, right? So we do that. But then, we come in contact or we start really cultivating our Krishna consciousness a little bit more, because now, okay, we understand that there are certain things that maybe we used to eat that aren't edible, right? For some of us, especially raised in the West, we realize, oh, that's actually not food. That's a living entity that, that should have just gone and lived its life, but that's another thing. So we start learning, okay, well, there are things that we shouldn't eat. So we start avoiding those, but still we have our own specific tastes, right? So we still keep preparing the things that we like. And we find out that, also things should be offered, because if you're even if you're eating vegetables, right, it's still a living entity, right? So if it's not first offered in sacrifice, yajna shishtashinas chanto muchante sarvakil bisai bunjate te tvagam papa ye pachantyat makaranat. If it's not offered first in sacrifice, then you are actually eating sin, even if it's, the most cruelty-free, gluten-free, paleo, whatever, I don't know. There's all the terms that are popular these days. If it's not offered, you're eating sin, right? No matter what. So then we say, okay, so then we have to start offering things. So we start offering things, right? But we're still offering the things that we like, right? The things that the flavors that we're accustomed to, the things that we're attracted to. So we do that, and that's good. It's a good step, because whatever we're eating now, at least we're not incurring further sin, because first, we're actually offering it. But eventually, we should start understanding, all right, well, what is Krishna like? Actually, there's a little step before that, where we're still making the things that we like, but we're starting to become more conscious about the actual preparations, right? The ingredients. Now, instead of, making our, okay, so first we were like ordering pizza, right, from a place, and then we thought, well, it's better if a devotee is making it, or an aspiring devotee. So then we start making it ourselves, but we're making it out of whatever, canned ingredients and frozen this and that, right? Then we start thinking, well, maybe we should just go for better ingredients, right? So then we start getting the organic stuff, right? The fresh stuff. Maybe there's a farm stand nearby where it's local. Then maybe even we take it a step further and we start growing our own, vegetables, where we take the seeds from the fruits and vegetables that were already given by Krishna, and we plant them and we water them and we watch them grow, and we understand how everything's coming from Krishna, so it helps the consciousness. So we start doing that. But then eventually, the steps should become where we actually find out what Krishna likes, and we offer him that. Instead of what we like, the best of what we like, we should find out what he likes and offer him the best of that. And the best example of this, because this is where generally we lose people here when we start talking about this, they start thinking, no, why would we make something that we don't even like? Let's, if we're not eating sin, we're using the best possible ingredients. That should be it. That's the topmost. Why should we even talk about anything above that? But we find when we have a personal relationship with someone, right? So very recently, I've been cooking for my guru from time to time, right? And he has things that he likes and things that I normally wouldn't eat. Actually, when I cook for him, I cook many things that I don't even end up eating, right? That I wouldn't eat, that I'd never prepare for myself, because it just, it's just not something that I would do. But it's such a nice service, because that someone likes something and you have a relationship with them and you want to please them. And so it's absolutely worth it. It wouldn't be worth it for you to make it for yourself, but it is worth it to make it for them, right? And there are even things that I definitely wouldn't cook, because, like, for example, I'm allergic to cinnamon. So there are things with cinnamon in it that I would prepare for him. Obviously I wouldn't eat it, because then my face would break out. But it's the thing. So when there's a relationship, a personal relationship, you consider what the other person wants. You don't make them what you want, right? Because maybe that's not what they prefer. They like something else. Like I said, some of us prefer savory, some of us prefer sweet, some of us like the mix, but it has to be a certain proportion. So the point is that when we have a personal relationship, we start to understand what those person's preferences are, right? And then we start making like that. So we inquire first in Shastra gives us some guidelines of different things that Krishna likes. There are also different devotees that we learn from. What Srimati Radharani cooks, what Lord Chaitanya, his different devotees. Raghava Pandit, we read about the bags of prasadam that Raghava Pandit used to bring to Lord Chaitanya, and they're elaborately described, the way they're made, all these things, and they were very pleasing to Lord Chaitanya. So there are these different things that we can find out, right? And then we can start doing that. And this is how we get out of the self-centric mentality to the God-centric mentality. We stop thinking, what do I want? And therefore I'll make it the best I can. And I'll acknowledge that Krishna is there and I'll offer it to him, but really I'm just doing it for myself. We have to get out of that consciousness. That's the thing that we really need. And these sections of Bhagavatam show us, the example of Indra, who he had all of the right things going for him, but his consciousness was, every other ingredient was there, but the consciousness wasn't there yet because he still wanted to materially enjoy. So the way for us to get off of this tendency to materially enjoy is to, from time to time, step out of our comfort zone and actually prepare something for the Supreme Lord that we actually wouldn't need. We wouldn't go through the trouble of doing it for ourselves because it's not worth it for us, but it is worth it for him. So even if it's just on festival days and we make something that, we've heard that he likes, and we make it and we offer it to the deities and we don't even get any, probably. Sometimes we will, because the remnants come out, but sometimes on festivals, there are so many preparations, right, that you may not even get the preparation. So it's times like this when we actually can step out of that self-centric consciousness and actually step into get a taste of Krishna consciousness. And we can actually do this on a daily basis, but at least we should start doing this occasionally, in order to get that consciousness. And these pastimes are there to show us, to remind us that we shouldn't feel like we are just completely properly situated and we have nothing to worry about. There's always something to worry about until we are back home, back to Godhead. Here in this material world, it's very precarious. There are so many distractions. We are very easily duped, tricked by the mind, by others, and we have to counteract this. And the way that we counteract this is we spend our time studying Shastra, we inquire from the Guru, get his instructions, we follow the examples and cooperate with the sadhus. These are very important. Then the other thing, if we can understand the other thing about the universal form that can help us with our consciousness is that if we can understand that everything we're dealing with in this material world is just a part of Krishna, isavasamidam sarvam, everything animate or inanimate is owned by the Supreme Lord. It comes from him. If we can see the world in this way, instead of seeing it as a place that, where I can independently enjoy, then we can understand that since everything comes from him, that everything can actually be used in his service because it's just a part of him. So whatever we are currently attracted or attached to, we can actually use that in Krishna's service. We just have to figure out how to properly use it instead of using it for our own selfish purposes, use it for Krishna's purposes, right? And so there's a verse that I often quote, or at least paraphrase, from the first canto, 5th chapter, it's text 34. And it says, thus, when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which caused his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work. So the universal form teaches us, and I've gone through this many times, but it's worth repeating. It teaches us that the things that we're attracted to, we just have to add Krishna. We have to understand how these things can be used properly. So it's not that we give things up, we give mentalities up, right? The things are actually okay. Everything can be used in Krishna's service, right? But the mentality has to be adjusted. And so this is how the universal form of the Lord helps us to make that transition from using a thing for our own selfish purposes to using that same exact thing for its intended purpose, what it's actually meant for. And the reason it comes up so often, right? The description of the universal form, it's there in Bhagavad Gita. We've covered it a couple of times already in Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's going to come up a couple more times. In this canto, again, it will come up, and also again in the 5th canto, it will come up so many times. The reason that it comes up so often, and the reason that it's important, is because we have a tendency to understand things in theory, but not actually fully realize them. So a common example, when Srila Prabhupada would give class, his most common class would be on how we are not the body, but we're spirit soul, right? That's the most common class he gave, right? And a lot of his disciples and followers also give this class. And those of us who have been around for a while, we sometimes have a tendency to think that, okay, well that's for the beginners. That's what you do for, like, there's first timers, and then you want to give them just a taste of the philosophy, and that's like, just the the beginner class, right? And so unfortunately, sometimes those of us who have been around a while, when we hear a class like that, we figure, all right, I know this, it's fine. I can, go do something else, right? Not pay attention, do something else. But although we have accepted in theory that we are not the body, and it's obvious, right? For some of us, it's just quite obvious that we're not this body, that we're spirit soul. Yet, no matter how obvious it is, many times we don't actually act as if we are not the body. We accept that we're not the body. We know from authority that we're not the body. We know from experience that we're not the body, but we still act as if though we are the body, right? When the body becomes hungry, all we think about is food. Oh, we have to get some food, even if it's prasad. It's like, where can I get prasad? What time is prasad? What, we very much act as if we are the body. We still identify with the body, not just the gross body, but also the subtle body. Sometimes someone will do something that we think is, that's not right. That's, disrespectful or something like that. And we're actually identifying with this body and thinking that, why are you being disrespectful to me? It's because we're identifying with the body. So these classes on how we're not the body, we have to keep hearing them because we're still acting as if we are the body, even though we've accepted, yeah, okay, we're not the body. So in a similar way, the universal form, it comes up again and again. We're like, yeah, I get it. Everything comes from Krishna. Okay, I got it. But we're not acting in that way because I'm picking this up and I'm picking that up, and I'm not doing it for Krishna. I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it for my pleasure, my comfort, my shelter, my whatever. I'm eating these things because that's my preference, So the reason the universal form is there is to show us that, okay, no, right now you're acting in an improper way. You're thinking that you're independent controller and enjoyer. Now, the thing that you're using, that's not the problem. It's just the consciousness. So the universal form shows us how to properly use everything in Krishna's service. And so that's why it comes up again and again and again. And that's why it's very important for us. Because until we actually see, what's the verse? I think anyway, I don't remember the number. It's either, I think it's 6:30, 9:30. It's either 6 or 9. But for one who sees me everywhere and who sees everything in me, to him I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. So we have to be able to see Krishna in everything. And that's the easiest thing because it actually is in everything. Like, he's within every living entity, right? So it should be the easiest thing ever. He's there. It's not like we have to imagine something, right? He's there. We just have to uncover our polluted consciousness and actually see it. So through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, we can do this. So just the last time, that sentence that Srila Prabhupada mentioned at the end of that first purport that we read, only by attainment of a service attitude in the transcendental position can one enter into the kingdom of God. So this is the main point of these verses, of this chapter, of this canto, of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. No matter how situated we think we are, if we don't develop this service attitude in the transcendental position, we cannot enter into the kingdom of God. Okay, I'll stop here to see if there are any questions or comments or further discussions on the subject matter. The next chapter, we're going to be talking about the conversations between, it'll be a bit different, but the universal form will come up again. Anytime we feel laxed and, we're, enjoying this material world to whatever extent, or identifying with this body, we need to be reminded. And so it comes up again and again. It comes up in prayers too. Anytime these highly elevated Vaishnavas will be offering prayers to Lord Krishna, and they're actually mentioning that this universal manifestation is his body, right? They're mentioning that. And they have a close relationship with Krishna, and that's how they're starting their prayers. So it's an important aspect for us to understand, because us being here in this material world, for some of us, it is our way to reciprocate with the Supreme Lord, right? So currently we're reciprocating with him in the wrong way, right? By thinking ourselves independent and therefore doing whatever we want, acting according to whim. But we have the opportunity to turn that all around just with the very things that we are dealing with, right? The same exact things that are keeping us here perpetually in this material world can become instruments of our bondage. We just have to understand these sections from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra and apply them properly. And then we won't fall into the trap of, being on paper very properly situated, having spiritual master, taking his instructions, but still not having the right consciousness, right? We want to avoid that pitfall. No questions or comments? Okay, fair enough. So we will end here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Virat Rupa ki jai. Thank you all for joining this morning.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. See, all these things, these lokas, and then other Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, they're explaining about that Virat Rupa, his personal thing. It was very interesting. Yesterday also, we were listening to some things, like Brahmanas or his, what do you call,
Head.
Yeah.
That would have been a couple days ago. Yeah.
Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, those
His
things,
arms.
arms. So that was very, very much.
She's the torso, she just the legs. Yeah.
So when we see the deity form, so I feel that from lotus feet to head. So all these things, if you think, and now we are saying about the lokas. So it's all very interesting. A lot of things to know about. Not that just like the praying deity and then going to the temple and then just see the deity and come back. No, we had to think a lot.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for explaining all that, Prabhu.
Thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna.